Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn another poem, Huntsman by Edward Lowbury. Edward Lowbury was born in 1913. He was a famous bacteriologist, pathologist, and he is more scientific in his behavior, and he's more radical, and he's more thinking about his findings, and he's more reasoning about his literary works. And he shifted to Kenya in 1943, and he was a wartime editor in Kenya. During the time of Kenya, he might have heard certain Kenyan folklores. So this poem, Huntsman, also carries a ballad format. So ballad format means the dialogue within the narrative, and it's coming from one generation to another generation. More repetition is there, so it also carries the ballad format. And the Huntsman, the poem, reminds us about a brave man who even can fight with the lions. So this is the protagonist in this poem, and it reminds us a very famous quotation called speech is silver, silence is golden, and we need to govern our mouth, and excessive talking brings a disaster. වැඩිපුර කතා කරන්න ගියාම අපි හානියටපත් වෙනවා, something like that. This idea comes from this moral. That moral comes from this poem. So the folklore carries three characters. From the characters itself, more humorous because there is a talking skull, කියන්නේ කතා කරන හිස් කබලක් තියෙනවා. And there is a Kagwa. Kagwa is a very imprudent, දුරදිග හිතන්නේ නැති foolish man. And there is a king also in the story, and there were two guards also in the story. So once Kagwa hunted a lion, he saw a talking skull in the forest. So without thinking seriously, without thinking much, and without being prudent, without using the common sense, Kagwa told the matter to the king. And the king was amazed about the situation and wanted to inquire about the situation from the use of two guards. And if that the situation is lie, the guards will kill this silly man called Kagwa. So the Kagwa went to the forest and try to find out the skull. At the last, they were able to find the skull, and the skull did not reply with the talking sound. Then these two guards killed this Kagwa. So that is a kind of a narrative behind this poem also. So it gives a very good morale for us and our life also. It's a kind of a thing that we need to keep in our brain, that is needless and witless thinking always leads to self destruction. අපි ගොඩක් හිතලා මතලා කරන්නේ නැති වුණොත්, දුරදිග හිතන්නේ නැතුව ඥානාන්විත නොවුනොත් අපේ ජීවිතේ විනාශය කියන එක ලැබෙනවා කියන එක we have to get into our understanding. Mindful thinking අපි ගොඩක් හිතලා මතලා වැඩ කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ වගේම mindful talking කියන එකත් අතිශය වැදගත් වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම ස්ථානෝචිත ප්‍රඥාව තියෙන්න ඕනේ, common sense අපි ගාව තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ වගේම දුරදිග හිතන්න ඕනේ, අපි prudent වෙන්න ඕනේ. අන්න ඔය වගේ වැදගත් ජීවිතයට ගන්න පුළුවන් පාඩමක් දෙන very nice poem is we can call as Huntsman. This Huntsman poem is based on blank verse. Blank verse means the unrhymed lines, that is iambic pentameter pattern. It was famous in 16th century, and it is the distinguished with free verse also, right? So this blank verse form carries irregular rhyming pattern. This irregular rhyming pattern supports the theme of irresponsible, foolish nature of the hunter who didn't govern the tongue. So you have to remember that the technique also supports for the theme. So when you are answering a question also, you can argue that this irregular rhyming pattern reminds us the irresponsible, foolish nature of the hunter also. So that keep in your understanding when you are writing an answer. So symbols also there. Talking skull is there. The skull symbolizes the death, and Kagwa is a living organism, living part. Personification, skull talk. So it's a kind of a personification technique we find. humor through the talking skull, humor comes from the characters, humor come from the incidents, humor come. So like that you need to discuss at the examination. Skull never replies even if Kadwa pleads. So even the Kadwa pleads the skull to talk, but the skull didn't talk. So it also brings humor for the story. And the technique of role reversal also you can see. Kadwa asked from the skull, how did you come here? The talking brought me here. It is something ambiguous statement. Ambiguous means it's not clear. It's something about unclear statement. It might have double meaning also. So you have to understand that also ambiguous statement there. So the skull says talking brought me here, but when it come to the last part of the story, when the skull did not talk, then when Kadwa was killed by the two guards, the skull talked and told Huntsman, how did you come here? So the role reversal also we can see from this, we can see as a technique also. Suspense, it's something about curiosity, is created from this poem, waiting for skull's response. So the the guards and the Kadwa, they are waiting for the response. So it is a technique of suspense. And irony also, skull is discrete because it's a non-living thing, so it's a dead thing, but it's more prudent, more discreet, vichakshanaශීලී බුද්ධිමත්ව කටයුතු කරනවා skull. But living humans who has brain, although they have a brain, but they are imprudent, they don't have common sense, they are not thinking too much, so they don't have mindful thinking, mindful talking. So that of course a kind of irony we can see, because as human, if you have a brain, you have to be common sense, you have to be prudent, you need to use mindfulness like that. So that of very good lesson for us. Inversion also there, because the king was really agitated, he was really confused about the situation. So the technique of inversion, have I seen or heard a skull in which talk like that. So this is something about the king's agitation is, we can see as a technique of inversion, the word order change in these lines, right? So antithesis, mainly the two characters, the king, the character of Kadwa, we can compare and contrast that two situations. So that actions of the king is really authoritative, he's more dictatorship is there. He uses power, and he's he want to find out the real situation, but Kadwa was really imprudent, without common sense. So it's a kind of a antithesis for the foolish man. So and king somewhat use the the wisdom and the intelligent like that. So you can compare the actions of these things also, right? So this is something about the overview of the poem, but for your exam preparations, so you need to always focus about the excessive talk might brings disaster for your exam preparation. So you need to talk about that it has what you call this, the theme, and you need to talk about certain techniques with the quotations. Especially, you need to very much focus about the quotations and all. In my next video, we are going to analyze the poem. So until that, subscribe my channel. This is Indic English Academy. Thank you very much. We'll meet in next video. I go on.